Warning, warning, long freaking video incoming. Grab your popcorn, grab your drinks, sit down and watch the top 10 albums of 2020. Hey everyone, my name is Matt. Welcome back to my channel. Today was going to be just kind of a normal top 10 albums of the year video, but it's been a little while, so there's a lot to catch up on. I'm going to start just with a small channel update for anyone who's interested, then go into a list of my top 10 favorite albums that came out in 2020, and then just more general top 10 albums I was listening to in 2020, regardless if they came out last year or not. If you want to skip right to the lists, I have put all the timestamps in the description, so you can go click on those, or they should show up kind of in your timeline of the video if you just hover over. So if you want to get to those, you can skip right to those, but let's just get into the channel update first. Alright, so starting off just with a quick update, and honestly there isn't much to say except for thank you guys. I started this channel kind of on a whim at the beginning of quarantine. It was something I'd wanted to do for a while, didn't really think it would go anywhere, and I'm really proud of kind of how far I've come with it. I love seeing the same people kind of show up in the comments. I love getting your DMs on Instagram. I've had some great conversations with some of you. Above all, I'm just really happy that people watch and enjoy my stuff. Having people watch your videos, though, does come with a couple of struggles. The main one being that I want to satisfy all of you by bringing the videos that you want to see. But I also want to keep my content diverse enough so that I can keep enjoying what I'm doing and also bring in an audience that kind of aligns with my tastes. That means that sometimes things don't come out for a long time, like, you know, that one video a lot of you are waiting for. And I hope you all know that I see your messages, I know that you want these videos, but honestly, I'm not getting paid to do any of this. So I'm not gonna make these videos unless I feel like I can really make something good to put out that I'm proud of and that I think you guys will enjoy. That said, I think I finally do have something to say about Good Luck, so I'll make that video when the time is right. But just know that I'm not trying to abandon you. In fact, I'm actually trying to keep everyone, which means that I kind of make videos like, you know, just on the fly, trying to be like, oh, I haven't, you know, talked to this crowd in a while or this crowd in a while, and I try to just, you know, build up on that. But I'm also trying to make sure I make things about stuff that I'm actually interested in, because I think that that comes across in the videos. With that out of the way, I want to jump into some resolutions I have for the channel in 2021. First off is I hope to upload more consistently, and you know, you can see how well that's going so far. Really getting into this channel last summer and uploading weekly was super fun for me, and I hope that I can kind of get back into that. I also hope I can diversify my content a little bit more with things like collaborative video essays, interviews, kind of vlog type stuff, and of course showcasing my favorite music for you guys. Now that that's out of the way, I just wanted to say another huge thank you to everyone who has been watching my videos. It really means the world to me, and here's to a great 2021. Now, without any further ado, my top 10 albums of 2020. Also, a quick disclaimer, Whole Lotta Red is not on this list. That isn't because it isn't good. I think if it was, I would have put it like at 5 or 4. I love it that much. However, since it did come out like 6 days before the year ended, I'm going to judge it on my 2021 list. So we'll see if it ages well and ends up there. Coming in at number 10, we have Dreaming of David by Ryan Beatty. Last year there was James Blake, this year there's Ryan Beatty. A Matt Lawrence top 10 albums would not be complete without some moody electronic white boy R&B. All jokes aside though, I do think this album is really beautiful. There's a lot of excellent songwriting, great performances and harmonies. I'm such a sucker for like layered vocals. One artist just layered vocals all over each other, and this album has a lot of that. Also really sensitive and personal subject matter that I think is handled with great care. I did a video on this album a few months ago, so if you want more detailed thoughts and kind of my classic reaction, you know, representation of this album, you can go check that video out. But yeah, Ryan Beatty, great album, and I'm excited to see what he has in store for us next. Coming in at number 9, we have Movies by Slow Pulp. This one I talked about in my Things I Like November 2020 video. It kind of crept up on me right at the end of the year, even though I had people telling me about it for kind of the whole year. And this is another one that just, the songwriting, man. These things just got stuck in my head. I would listen to this full album just over and over and over again. I got really into like shoegaze this year, and this album is kind of shoegaze revival. It takes a lot of those same elements kind of with the guitar sounds and stuff, but also introducing kind of other sorts of musical elements like sampling. I wish I had better words for it, but ultimately I just like this album because I think it sounds nice. Even though I only started listening to it 2 months ago, the amount of times I did before the year came to a close, I think warrants it a spot on this list. Coming in at number 8 is an artist I did not know before this past year, and this is Star Maker by Honey Harper. The one word I would use to define this album is just dreamy. I don't love country music, trying to not be that person that's like, I like everything except country. But seriously, country is probably the genre that I've listened to the least in my lifetime. But oh my God, this Honey Harper album, man. I know I've said the last 2 albums have great songwriting, but genuinely I think Star Maker is like if you want to just masterclass in writing good pop songs or pop country songs, listen to Star Maker. Every verse and every hook is just so catchy, so concise and lovely. The singing is just beautiful. There are these really, really nice performances. It's one of those albums that I love going back to because you might see a song title and remember the chorus, and then the song starts and you're like, I know every single inch of this song. I really wanted to put this on this list as well because I've not seen that many people talking about it, and I just want to raise more awareness for this just fantastic, beautiful album. So Honey Harper, great job, and I'm looking forward to what you put out next. This might be a hot take for, based epic music listener like me. Tame Impala with The Slow Rush. I know it's like really cool to kind of like hate on Tame Impala right now, but I'll be honest, like they just make good music. I don't really get the hate. Sure, maybe there's like an annoying fan base, but I don't know. I think this album was just fantastic and I listened to it so much. It's obviously not as groundbreaking as their earlier work or even Currents, but that doesn't really matter when the songs are just so good. Are you noticing a trend this year? I really just needed comfort and happy music sometimes. There's just so many amazing moments on this album. The freaking bass line on Borderline, but also just kind of the experience of listening to this album. It was one of the few that came out at the beginning of the year that like I had friends over at midnight and we listened to it, and it was kind of, the soundtrack of the last couple weeks before everything just went to pieces. And I don't know, I think there's just really good songs. The thing about Tame Impala is regardless of what you think of the music, if it's your cup of tea or not, you can't deny that just the mixing is insane. Everything is so clean, so punchy, the songwriting is so catchy. Yeah, I don't know, I this might revoke my like epic music card, but I don't care because The Slow Rush was awesome. Up next at number 6, we have an album that I think is just on everybody's top 10 of the year, and that is The Weeknd with After Hours. I think that this project pretty much delivered on everyone's expectations, whether you're an old Weeknd fan, a new Weeknd fan, or you just like his radio hits or whatever. Me personally, this album was basically exactly what I wanted after The Weeknd's involvement with Uncut Gems, teasing kind of more this story-driven, darker, more intense production. The fact that he's been working with One Oh Tricks Point Never, I was really hoping that we'd get this kind of sound from this album. It just delivered in every way that I wanted it to. I listened to it all the time. I think it's his strongest project since probably Trilogy. Like, honestly, I do think it is better than his last 2 albums. Additionally, though, I do think that this era for The Weeknd is really, really impressive, as he's been able to show his vision both in his music videos and the music itself. The costuming, the countless references to other movies. He's really just letting himself give into his influences, wear them on his sleeve, but in a way that doesn't feel derivative. It's just proving that he really is a great artist with a good vision, and that has enhanced my enjoyment of this album so much more. And just a side note, can we talk about the Metro Boomin production on this album? Heartless is not only potentially the best produced, like, hip-hop trap sounding song of last year. Those keys that come in the second verse are just incredible, but also the fact that he produced Faith. What? He seriously is one of the most versatile and impressive producers in the game, and yeah, that album's amazing. Now we're into the top half of the list with number 5, which is Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers. I think all of you guys know that I absolutely adore this album. This is another one that's on pretty much everybody's top 10 list. You can go watch my first reaction here, and my emotions towards this album have pretty much not changed, except for I think maybe it's even better than the first time I heard it. I got into Phoebe Bridgers this year. I was listening to Stranger in the Alps all the way up until Punisher came out, and then Punisher came out, and it's almost, I think it's actually just as good, just a little different. Phoebe's voice is incredible. I love the lyrics. I honestly don't know what to say about Punisher that hasn't been said already. The songwriting is great. The singing is great. The production is just like a step up. It sounds a little bit more expensive. I don't know. Everything is just great. I really enjoy it, and I'm glad that Phoebe Bridgers is getting the props she deserves for this fantastic album. Coming in at number 4, another one you guys knew I love. This is Blade 333. As I discussed in my Blade tier video, I do think this is one of the best Blade projects. I had it on repeat for months. Super catchy songwriting, but also just a great advancement of, kind of this new, more pop influence, but also more like, I don't know, fantasy influenced vibe. I don't even know how to describe it, but I do think that the risks on this album pay off really well. The more safe tracks are the best of Blade's discography, and I don't know, I just found it super enjoyable. It's probably my favorite of the 3 projects he dropped this year. I think it delivered on pretty much everything that I could have wanted from a Blade project, and solidified him as, I think, one of the most interesting and influential artists working right now. This is another one I have a first reaction for. You can go check that out right here, I think. I'm gonna flip it if that's wrong. Coming in at number 3, yet another I Read Blogs album with Fetch the Bolt Cutters by Fiona Apple. Now, this album was kind of interesting for me because the first time I heard it, I didn't really latch onto it like a lot of other people did. This is my first Fiona Apple album, so I was kind of not sure what to expect. And I'll be honest, I was taken aback kind of by the very DIY sounding production that sounds like it's just a bunch of stuff she found in her kitchen and made this album with. But weirdly, I would go back to this album a lot more than I expected after listening to it the first time. And then, of course, after digging into kind of the messaging of this album, the backstory behind it, I just found it completely captivating. This is an album that I start, and just from that, I feel like I'm being sat down in front of a fire with a blanket, and I'm gonna watch like my favorite movie. Like, I'm gonna sit through just this journey of this album. Even songs in themselves are so cinematic and expansive that I almost can't believe it's a full project, because there's so many just great 4 or 5 minute pieces that could stand kind of on their own. But yeah, I think everyone knows that this album is great, but if you don't, I would highly recommend giving it a shot. It is a fantastic work, and I'm just really glad that I got to listen to it this year. Coming in at number 2, we have Microphones in 2020 by The Microphones, or Mount Eerie, or Phil Elverum. And yeah, if you don't know, legendary indie like rock band and outfit Microphones, led by Phil Elverum, also of Mount Eerie, released this album, which is really a 50-minute single song that is like this weird meta retrospective on the career of Phil Elverum and his involvement with the Microphones. And this was probably the most emotional album experience that I had of this entire year. I think compared to all the other albums on this list, I've listened to Microphones in 2020 the least, probably only 2 or 3 times the whole way through, but just the pure experience of this album, it was just so like important to me that I had to put it really high on the list. And that doesn't mean the music is bad. I think it's actually fantastic. I think the way that this one loop kind of never gets boring through 50 minutes, because it gets distorted and changed, and these recurring motifs come in and out and all this stuff. It's really a masterful work, and I can see how it would have taken, just ages to produce. But if you don't know, this album was accompanied by a visual album on YouTube that was literally just hundreds of photos that Phil was just kind of flipping through as the album played. And as someone who makes videos about music, and also my style of editing includes really visualizing, this was just so powerful for me. You'd get to kind of the big emotional instrumental break, and this iconic album cover picture would come up, or a picture from his childhood or something else, and it was just like, oh my god, so riveting and really, really emotional. But also just, I think 2020 as a year starting this YouTube channel, when this album came out, I was kind of in a creative rut, feeling a little bit stuck in one thing, but also worried that I wasn't doing enough, feeling really unsure of myself. And the whole message of this album pretty much being a life story, but also kind of a cathartic acceptance of just the fact that life goes and you can't really do anything about it. I really needed that when this album came out. I needed kind of the acceptance that I just had to jump in and let things keep going and try things and, you know, do what little I can. I wrote a video for this album, which I ended up not being able to film before I moved. But if you go to my album of the year, you can read this script I had for this video and listen along to the album. It would mean a lot if you did, because that was a very personal video. This album I can see being very personal for me in the future. And yeah, I recommend everyone have the experience. Just sit down maybe with a snack or something and watch this thing, because it is pretty mind-blowing. Now, we've gotten this far into the list, so you might be wondering, where are a lot of other great albums like this one or this one or this one? And my answer to that would be 2020 was a weird year where, because of everything that was going on, I kind of was sitting in a lot of comfort with albums that I already knew. I would kind of just go back to things that I already knew I liked, which meant that some of these more dense projects or things that I thought were good but wasn't really my cup of tea didn't end up on my top 10. That said, these albums are all ranked on my album of the year, and I think a lot of them are really good. It's just, I wanted to do this top 10 based a little more honestly about what I was listening to, not just what I thought was really good, because there was plenty of great music that I just kind of didn't get around to until too late. And my number one album of 2020 is Sawayama by Rina Sawayama. Because how could it not be, dude? I knew this was my album of the year pretty much from like the second time I heard it. This is another one I did a video on. I actually love that video. I think it's one of my favorites that I've made, so you can go check that one out as well. But seriously, this is just like perfect pop music. One of my best friends said once to me that the best genre of music is good pop, and I gotta say, I think I agree with him. Listening to this album is just such like a rush of energy and passion. It's like incredible. Not only that, but the fact that the subject matters are also pretty intense and interesting. Capitalism, heritage, and ethnicity. I think Rina provides a very interesting lens that we don't get a lot in popular music, and I certainly don't get a lot in the music that I listen to. So listening to this and having the music be as good as it is, but also as interesting as it is, was just like, I don't know, kind of encapsulated to me everything that made music in 2020 good. Was, you know, taking fascinating and perhaps even avant-garde subjects, making them into these really just great tracks that are almost accessible. I don't know. It was, yeah, really, really, really good. If you haven't listened to this album, I don't know what you're doing. It's literally fantastic. Everyone thinks it's fantastic. You should be listening to it. Rina deserves the whole world. And also, shout out to Clarence Clarity, because the reason I even listen to this is because one of my favorite albums of all time is Clarence Clarity's Think Peace. He did almost all the production, and you can just feel it, the energy, the melding of genres. It's incredible. And it is my favorite album that came out in 2020. So yeah, that is my list of the top 10 albums from 2020. Let me know what you thought of my list, if you thought it was garbage, or if you agreed and liked these albums as well. And next we're going to get into my top 10 albums that I listened to in 2020. So not necessarily things that came out this year, but what I was listening to the most. Yeah, I hope this one will be interesting to you guys as well. So let's get into it. Alrighty. Just took a quick break, listened to Good Days by SZA, read about how epic Redditors are f***ing the stock market. But yeah, now it's time for my second list in this video, which is kind of like a video game donkey-esque year list, where I'm not necessarily talking about things that came out in 2020, just what I was listening to in 2020. And honestly, looking over my list, it is a little bit /mu core, but I I do think there's good stuff in here, so hopefully you'll stick around and maybe we can talk about some of these albums. But yeah, let's just get right into it. All right, so coming in at number 10, we have You Will Never Know by Sweet Trip. I know that Sweet Trip's other album, like the whole bit glitchy whatever one, I forget the name right now, is pretty much regarded as their best. But to be honest, I didn't love that sound the first time I heard it, then randomly got the song Milk recommended to me, and then I was listening to You Will Never Know all summer. Really dreamy, really cool dream pop, very sugary, very just beautiful and fun, feels like a sunset, and yeah, really, really cool album. Coming in at number 9, we have Rocket by Sandy Alex G. Last year, I heard my first Sandy Alex G album with House of Sugar, and this year I went through the back catalog and was listening to his other albums, and I just ended up loving Rocket all summer and spring. It was my hike music, and yeah, I think it's just a very pretty album. Coming in at number 8, kind of a weird hidden gem that I found just while kind of browsing around album of the year is Hex by Bark Psychosis. During the beginning of the summer, end of spring, I had this kind of strange sudden shoegaze and like 90s rock thing that happened. I watched a couple Greg Araki movies and then that was like all I wanted to listen to. And I found this album, which is like kind of an early post-rock thing. There's only like 6 songs. They're all like, 5 to 8 minutes, but oh my god, the atmosphere on this thing is amazing. It's really pretty. It's not as noisy as something like, other post-rock bands like Swans, but it's also not as like beautiful and orchestral as something like Godspeed You, Black Emperor. It kind of sits in this nice middle ground that feels, very 90s, very edgy, which I really like. Some people are kind of hit or miss on the singer. I think the vocals work perfectly for this type of music. So I heard this album originally then in the summer, and then since moving to New York, oh my god. Every walk at night, like I'm listening to this album. Songs like, let's see, Absent Friend, Eyes and Smiles, A Street Scene, just really, really great, like nighttime, really cool energy. And this one I don't think is super popular, so I'd recommend this to anyone. If you kind of are into other albums like, say, Loveless, stuff like that, I think you might get a kick out of this kind of more cinematic approach to that kind of music. It's really cool. Coming in at number 7, another back catalog that I finally dug through last year. It's Bottomless Pit by Death Grips. There's not much to say about Death Grips. It's the most I like music band that you could say. It's a little basic at this point. But I do think that the reason Bottomless Pit landed on my list and not anything else is I do think it's kind of the perfect middle point in their discography. It's not completely reinventing the wheel like some of their other albums do, but I do think just in terms of songs, it just has some of their best songs. It's just so catchy. It's so visceral. Every song is just like a banger. It's a quicker listen, which is awesome. I don't know if I think it's their best project, as I think like The Powers That Be is so huge and expansive that, that adds a little something to it. Albums like No Love, Deep Web, and The Money Store are just so like influential that, they have that going for them. But I think, like I said, Bottomless Pit just sits in this perfect middle ground. It's just such a cool album. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. The other reason this landed on my list is it was in heavy rotation during all the protests in July, and when I was feeling, helpless or whatever, I would throw on some of the most, crazy thrashing tracks on this album and go on a bike ride, and it was like a really, good release. I listened to it at one of the protests I went to, which just, I don't know, had like a lot of energy to it, and I don't know, just a really, really cool album. And I'm happy because I was really late to the party, and I'm glad that now I kind of have Death Grips knowledge, in my back pocket, and I got let in on this really awesome music. Coming in at number 6, another Slash Mew album, which is Loveless by My Bloody Valentine. I had a friend recommend this to me last year, listened to it, and thought it was really cool, but this year, again, with all the turmoil and everything hitting, it just totally clicked for me. I love how dirty everything is on this album. It's just as sweet and dreamy as it is just like totally crunchy and gnarly, and I really haven't found another album that sounds anything like it. It is as unique as everyone says, and I think it is just stunning. It worked both as a Going on a Walk in Quarantine album, but I will say that since coming back to the city, I cannot wait until I can make like a, night out montage video to one of these songs. I just love the aesthetic so much, and I hope that someday soon when things are open, I can kind of replicate the images of just kind of like a drunken, crazy night that this music gives me. And yeah, I love this one, and I'm so glad. Again, it's a classic that I finally got introduced to. Speaking of classics, another classic that I finally got into this year is Selected Ambient Works 85 to 92 by Aphex Twin. What can even be said about Aphex Twin at this point? The reason I was so late to this is I don't know. I used to listen to a ton of electronic music, but I was introduced to electronic more through like dubstep, trance. So to me, EDM was always like waiting for the drop, waiting for the big bombastic, whatever to happen. Since then, I've matured a little bit, and I do think I still love electronic music, but manifests itself a little bit more in music like this. Aphex Twin is obviously hugely influential, widely celebrated. You guys probably all know why this is good. I just ended up listening to it a ton. And one weird aspect of this music is I think everyone thinks of Aphex Twin as kind of like, oh, it's dark out. In my trench coat, like I'm walking around listening to this cool music. At least that's what I thought. But I went to the beach over the summer, and as the sun was setting, I threw Xtol on the aux and straight up had a like really just beautiful experience surrounded by all this nature and beauty, but listening to this really synthetic music. I don't know, give it a try. Listen to some of this outside. It's very nice. Coming in at number 4 is Stranger in the Alps by Phoebe Bridgers. I put Punisher on my top 10 albums of 2020 list, obviously, but this one I think I have an even closer connection to. I had a friend that was recommending this album for ages, and then when quarantine hit, I would go on these super long bike rides, and I remember the first time that I listened to this album on one of those rides the whole way through, and listening to the cover of You Miss My Heart and just like getting totally lost in that story. I couldn't believe like how good the songwriting is and how intense the imagery is, how consistent the themes are. It's just a gorgeous and depressing album, but just beautiful. There are just so many good moments on here. Obviously, Motion Sickness is a great song, but Smoke Signals, Funeral really hit close to home. Demi Moore, Scott Street. Like, this is what happens. I go through the track list and I'm just like, oh, I love everything. But I think what really ties it together is both Phoebe's voice and her songwriting ability. There are just beautifully memorable verses and choruses on this thing. It's gorgeous. If you haven't listened to this one and maybe you got introduced through Punisher, I would highly recommend listening to Stranger in the Alps. Coming in at number 3, we've got Just Got Back from the Discomfort, We're All Right by the Brave Little Abacus. This is a crazy kind of Midwest emo, even though it's a New Hampshire band. I don't even really know how I would describe this album. It's noisy, it's emo, it's very theatrical. I got kind of into the Midwest emo thing a couple years ago when I discovered American football. From then I listened to artists like Algernon Caldweller and stuff like that. But for some reason, Just Got Back has hit just this really emotional chord with me. I grew up doing theater, and there's something so theatrical about this album. The performances are so off the wall. There's so many beautiful musical detours. Like every song, there's a lot of emo music that I've listened to in this genre that's like very quick, kind of math rocky. I love how every song in here takes its time to breathe. I think the lyrics are absolutely stunning. There are passages that make me never want to write again because of how clever they are. But aside from that, the music is just beautiful. Putting away all the technicalities, like it's so raw. The melodies are just like, they hit and you're just like, oh, it's like this sigh of relief. Like when these things burst, when these choruses hit, the singing is outstanding. The playing of all the instruments is just awesome. All the ideas are so fresh. I can't believe this thing came out 10 or 11 years ago at this point. It's so forward thinking, and I had some very emotional experiences just listening to this album at different points through this year. I freaking love it. Everyone should listen to it. At number 2, we have Stratosphere by Duster. Another essential album that I didn't know about until this year that was also vital during my quarantine time. This one was my go-to, go on a walk, listen, develop video ideas, stuff like that. But even just like walking around kind of my empty suburb at night, trying to grapple with the fact that I was very far away from all the things that were going on, trying to figure out what my place was in all these issues, figuring out how I can help this very meditative, slow, kind of oppressive music. I don't know, it was there for me during those times, and I think it is great. Similar to Just Got Back from the Discomfort and from Loveless, this album really thrives on the technical aesthetics of it, the sound of it, just how grungy and lo-fi it is. It works 10 times better because of kind of how bad some of the songs sound, if that makes sense. But I don't know, there's just a lot of fantastic instrumentals on here. It's almost like drone music in the way that it works. It's obviously not drone or ambient, but it has that similar effect where the enjoyment of it kind of comes from whatever you're doing at the time, the emotions that you put into the music, and it's there to just kind of go over and over like waves, and you just sort of embrace, whatever it's giving to you. This album is a really, really unique experience. I love it a lot, and I can see it becoming potentially even one of my favorite albums of all time, just because of how much I listen to it and kind of how it changed a little bit of my perspective on music. I don't know. It's a fantastic, really, really interesting record. And my number one album in 2020 that didn't come out in 2020 is Dawn by Mount Eerie. Another kind of musical checklist thing that I got checked off this year was my exploration of Phil Elverum, Mount Eerie, and the Microphones. I listened to almost all of their albums this year, but Dawn, oh my God, what can you even say? This album, I almost don't even have words for. Haunting. It's gorgeous. It's extremely personal. It's very esoteric and ethereal at the same time. I think that this one works as a really good companion to Microphones in 2020, because some of the conclusions that Phil comes to in Microphones in 2020, just about kind of existing with the nature, are some of my favorite moments on Dawn, kind of reflecting on being at one with kind of the world around you, what that means as a person. There's a really lovely passage where he talks about going up a mountain, like lying in a river and just letting the water like float over his ears and whatever. And I don't know, like something about this imagery of just kind of giving yourself up, being what you are and what you can and existing where you do, like, oh my God, yeah, this one, I don't know, like it really, really struck a crazy emotional chord with me. And I know I've said this about every album on here, but literally I was just going on walks for like 4 months straight, and this one, when I was dejected at night, couldn't, really figure out what was going on, or I was out in the woods taking a walk, like this album was really here for me. Something I love about it too is the brevity of all the songs. A lot of them are very short, which at first bothered me, but now like the fact that there's so many tracks and I like know all of them because they're so distinct, and even it's literally just like Phil and his guitar, which is crazy. It's a dude and his guitar for 45 minutes, and now all these tracks that I know and have, a huge impact on me. And just kind of the minimalism of it, the way it showcases how good his songwriting and lyricism are. I don't know. I hope that one day like I could make an album that's like this impactful to someone, even for how simple it is. It's beautiful. And yeah, there's my list. That was like 40 minutes of talking. Like I said at the beginning of the video, thank you guys so much for watching. This last year has been an absolutely wonderful journey, and I feel extremely lucky to have the audience that I do have. Again, I'm working on a lot of different kinds of videos, figuring out sort of the logistics of filming here, getting stuff out that you want to see, but also, pleasing different types of viewers that I have, all that stuff. So I promise I see your messages. I'm listening. I'll get to it when I get to it. If you guys enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like. It does help me get this video out to other people. Let me know what your favorite albums were in the comments. If you had any similarities or you know any of these, we can talk about them. I would love to. But also, yeah, I hope you're excited for the upcoming year of content. Let me know if you think there's any artists I should watch out for or cover, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Here's to 2021. I hope you guys are all safe and healthy, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.